Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Middle East Monitor, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of you to today's seminar. And I'd like to extend our deepest thanks and appreciation for accepting our invitation, particularly those of you who've traveled from abroad, from Europe, from across the United Kingdom. We welcome you and we thank you. There's no doubt that developments in the media industry over the last 2 decades has transformed societies across the world. And the developments within the satellite industry and the broadcast of satellite TV in particular has given access of information to peoples and governments, institutions, in a way that has been unprecedented. But it was not only the delivery of information that we saw and that has distinguished the work of satellite broadcasts, but it was a sense of empowerment of peoples who had access to that information. Indeed, this industry has given a voice to peoples who were previously denied an opportunity to express their views, their aspirations, and their concerns of their societies. However, we have noticed that there has been an attempt to reverse that process of access to information and indeed to obstruct the process of empowerment of people through the work of this broadcast industry. We are here today to examine this phenomena, to look at the technical aspects of it, to examine its legal implications, its impact on the public opinion, and hence the reason we've gathered experts, commentators, and technicians in this field. We hope that they would provide a very rich analysis of this issue, and that we would come out at the end of the day with some very pertinent, constructive, and ambitious recommendations for the future. On behalf of the Middle East Monitor, Again, I thank you. And our chair today for this session is Dr. Anas Atikriti. I therefore hand you over to him. It's my pleasure to do so. And I wish you a very successful and fruitful seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much, Dr. Dawood Abdullah, the Director of the Middle East Monitor, and all your team for organizing this quite interesting, quite intriguing, quite fascinating seminar. We, here in London and across Europe, on a daily basis, there are seminars and symposiums and debates and the such, discussing all sorts of issues pertaining to the Middle East, but something like this I personally find extremely unique, and something that, at least from my own personal perspective, is something that I haven't really come across in recent months, particularly that we have the events, the escalating events in Egypt particularly, but also throughout the Middle East. Let me first of all start by introducing myself. I'm Anas Al-Tikriti. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and founder of the Cordoba Foundation here in London. And it gives me great pleasure to be chairing the first session in this one-day seminar. The title of the session will be After Egypt's Coup, Satellite Interference and Military Crackdown on the Media. Now, sometimes you can actually take from the title the substance that will be the focus of the discussion. And indeed, when we often talk about and address the technical, the telecommunication, and the media technology and broadcast technology expansion, in fact explosion over recent times, a technology that was vital and critical to seeing the waves of revolutions and the uprisings coined as the Arab Spring in late 2010 and 2011. It in a sense makes sense that those who find those revolutions and those waves of change not to their taste, not to their preference, seeing also that that technology becomes also part of the target of attack. And hence, if you all recall, and I recall extremely well, that in early February 2011, and just a few days before the fall of the former president of Egypt, Hosni Mubarak, there was a total media shutdown in terms of closing down satellites and telecommunications, and interfering even with international mobile operators such as Vodafone and others, so that they shut down their services, so that people can't Facebook and tweet and can't correspond with each other and call for the protests to carry on. We saw that, and it was something that took the world by surprise, but we didn't expect it to return after the coup on numerous occasions, to the extent that for about 3 or 4 months following the coup in July, there was a regular interference and jamming of broadcasters of various sorts. And we'll hear more about this in the coming hour or so of discussion. I'm pleased to have with me an illustrious and expert panel today. I have with me Adnan Fa'our from Al-Hawar satellite TV channel. I have also Ibrahim Nassar, who's Al Jazeera's engineering manager. And I have Alistair Sloan, who's a London-based journalist who has done various work and written several pieces and authored books on the issue of media censorship and the such. I will allow each presenter to speak for 10 to 15 minutes, after which we will open the floor for discussion. Last but not least, and before I hand to the first presenter, I would like to thank our media partners for today. I would like to thank Al Jazeera and Al Jazeera Mubashir. I'd also like to thank Al Hawar TV and all our media friends who are here covering this seminar. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Adnan Fa'our from Al Hawar TV station. And notably, Al Hawar itself became subject to interference in its coverage of the Arab Spring in 2011 by the Egyptian Nilesat. And I'm sure that Adnan will be touching on that, as well as talking about the specifics and the technical aspects of how this takes place. So over to you, Adnan.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for Memo for arranging this conference. It's something that we have not had before. It's an issue that is very important, yet has not been addressed at any time before this particular event today. I'd like to start with a very, very basic introduction to what jamming is about. Just briefly, does anyone know how does it actually work? Anybody knows can raise their hand? Maybe? No?
Can't see any.
Okay, good. This is good. Jamming is very, very simple thing. Exactly the same as when any satellite station would like to raise up and uplink a signal from any location using an SNG car or a machine. That same machine or same car can actually, with a tweaking of some frequencies, cause the jamming in a particular transponder or a frequency. So jamming is very simple in its own technical side, yet it is affecting a lot of people at one moment in time. One machine can block a transponder that have possibly 12 or 16 or 20 channels, and it could just jam the whole transponder, not allowing anybody to see signal from all of those channels broadcasting on that particular transponder. So jammers are like hackers, if you know the term of hackers in terms of computers. They will like to go into like a section where they could use their talent and their skills, not in a very best way from, like using the technical side. How does jammer work? There is an orbital jamming. An orbital jamming sends a signal from any terrestrial area in the ground into the satellite itself directly. It picks up a signal from where the upload takes place from the provider, and send a signal opposite to that. So it blocks the signal from going up, so it does not have a signal downloaded. There's another type of jamming. It's called the terrestrial jamming, and that is sending a signal locally to stop a signal from going out. So you can block a signal before it actually reaches the satellite. Who would like, how does it, what does it require? Like I said, it requires a machine that can be used for broadcasting and uplinking, and it blocks the signal from reaching the satellite. Who would do it? We all know those who like to block a channel from certain contents. They would not want this content to be seen. They can send a signal and block it. We've had, as Al-Hiwa TV, a block in 2013 after the coup from Egypt, and it was continuous jamming between the time that the coup took place up till late November 2013. So it was almost like somebody who have the machine ready. Anytime they would want to do a jamming, they can just switch on, jam the signal, and we were blocked from broadcasting. In 2008, we faced a slightly different problem where we were removed from Nilesat completely, and we were denied from broadcasting on satellite on the Nilesat itself. We had to move from Nilesat into Atlantic Bird then. Basically, why would anyone do jamming? I would say that it will not, maybe like, not maybe getting somebody who would want to hear this, what a channel would like to say. They could just jam it. So it's really politically very, very, very unfair and unjust, yet technically is possible to be done via many, many satellite providers.
Well, thank you, Adnan. So basically, I mean, the thing that is quite intriguing, and I mean, there will be discussion about this, but essentially you're saying that jamming, I mean, this whole technology that we're all immersed in, it could actually be stopped quite cheaply and quite affordably by, let's say, anyone.
Almost by anyone who has maybe an SNG.
An SNG is what, sorry, for a non-technical person like myself?
It's a card that provides uplink to a signal from a location.
Okay. So, just before I move to Ibrahim, you said that Al-Hawar, you were stopped from Nilesat. Nilesat, as far as I understand, is supposedly a company. It's an independent company. Mm-hmm. So what interest did they have in stopping Al-Hawar from broadcasting?
Well, in 2008, we had a program called Awraq Masriya, and that program was talking about issues within Egypt. And at one moment in time, we touched on some issues that the government in Egypt at the time with Hosni Mubarak did not like. And that coincidentally came across with the same time that Dr. Tamimi was in Egypt. And the day he left Cairo, we were blocked and removed from Nilesat.
Dr. Azzam Tamimi.
Dr. Azzam Tamimi.
Okay, well, we'll have scope for discussion after the three presentations, but I'd like to move to Ibrahim Nassar, who's Al Jazeera's engineering manager. Now, everyone here, I believe, knows what kind of impact the coverage of Al Jazeera had on the wave of events in the Middle East as of late 2010, and arguably up until now. And therefore, it comes as no surprise that in my papers I find the introduction that after the coup, Al Jazeera commissioned the Integral Systems Europe to investigate the source of jamming on the Egyptian-owned Nilesat satellite and pinpointed it to 3 locations in East Cairo and 1 in the west of the city. Now, again, I will allow Ibrahim 10 to 15 minutes to speak about this. It's extremely interesting to hear about the experience that Al Jazeera, I mean, one of the things that I find, and I'm pretty sure that most people who watch Al Jazeera, either Arabic or English or the various channels on the Al Jazeera network, will find that a common feature on the newsfeed, on the reel, is that the broadcast has changed from this particular frequency to another and such, as though this is sort of a habitual practice due maybe to the jamming that Ibrahim will talk to us about. So, Ibrahim, without further ado, over to you.
Thanks, Anas. And I would like to thank here Dr. Dawood and Memo actually for this opportunity and the gathering to talk about the interferences. Actually, it's quite important to realize, or that we start realizing, the importance of this problem and its impact on the broadcasters worldwide. Actually, the Al Jazeera experience with this one is a little bit unique, and we have been subject to experiences since long time ago, even before the World Cup, the most event where we have been interfered for the whole month of the World Cup. We have been subject to interferences occasionally before 2010, and it was always political oriented interferences. And honestly, every time the technology of geolocation, where the geolocation technology is the process of identifying the sources of interferences and locate them geographically to know where they are located or originated from. So this technology, it was a little bit not common in the Middle East, or it was available in the United States and Europe, but was not commonly used, implemented, commissioned in the MENA region. So in the early days, early 2000s, and we have been always interfered, we just monitor the content of the timing of interference. And we discover it's a program regarding Libya, resistance, or the other groups in the Arab region. So from that, we link it to be from that country. But of course, we don't have the evidence that proof that the interference is that originated from that country. So from 2010, we have been jammed, notably, and for long times during the World Cup, and this is considered like a big commercial losses for us. The investment that Al Jazeera Sports put in that event is huge, and everyone can imagine the size and the scope of such investment. Although we have a contingency plan planned ahead of that big event, we have been impacted, and it caused us to broadcast Al Jazeera Sports content on multiple transponders, around 16 transponders. Just we dual illuminate, and this caused us a huge budget, in the top of course, loss of reputations and some other consequences. Therefore, we look to this interferences as really a big threat for our business. And it's a big threat to our reach, to our audiences, where we are committed to reach with quality and ensuring continuity of reach. So based on that, we have been, then from the World Cup 2010, we continue in that, suffering from the interferences, reaching to the Arab uprising, where it was intensified, we can say, concerted, systematic attack against Al Jazeera Arabic, especially, and Al Jazeera Mubashir and Al Jazeera Mubashir Masr, where they are targeting the Arab audiences in the MENA region. So since the start of Arab uprising, from the Tunis revolution, and then from the events happened in Egypt, moving to Libya, to Syria, then again to Egypt. So we are always in peaks up and down with the Arab revolution, and we have all the time we are interfered. Then we are subject to interference on peaks, depends on how this revolutions in the Arab regions is evolving. So we tackle this one through different approaches and techniques. First of all, we need to know who is interfering to us. So we commissioned the satellite operator services, Arabsat, Eutelsat, and also we commissioned a very specialized company called Integral Systems, just Anas talked about. And those are always giving us effective results of the interferences. They characterize them, then they geolocate and confirm the location and sources. And it was really effective, those information, helping us to plan how we can mitigate the interferences, reducing the impact, reach the audiences. And this is why, as Anas mentioned a while ago, we keep changing the frequencies announcement in the scroll bar on our broadcast. But definitely we reach an ultimate solutions where those interferers cannot jam us anymore, honestly speaking. Since 2 years back, we are transmitting on specific transponders or channels on satellites where those guys never ever can interfere to us from MENA anymore. So for us, it is an end of the battle, honestly speaking. Although there are some still traditional standard frequencies where we are committed to continue on them, because still the solutions that Al Jazeera implemented is interim. We have to admit a fact here that satellite technology is a fragile technology. It's easy to attack. Unfortunately, it's a huge investment on satellite manufacturing. The cost of one satellite costs $1 billion a minimum. This is a small to medium size. When we talk about big satellites where they weight 6 tons or something, they cost more than $1 billion just to launch and put it on in the orbit. So the solutions that we cater so far, they are interim but effective to a certain extent, and still we are working on that to strengthen our presence, and from that we start a joint venture, a work after the World Cup with Hellsat, the Qatar National Satellite Organization and company, and they launched their first generation satellite in early October last year. And we are now operating 8 channels, 8 transponders for Al Jazeera Media Network and for PN Sports. So most of our content now secured at the hotspot 26 East. And at the 7 West, where we have been now talking about the, our really what's called unique or special nature experience for the interferences from Egypt. 7 West is still not very mature, the technology on the orbit there. And hopefully by the end of 2015, our procured services will be ready and will see the light, where we will put a final and ultimate end to this interferences on the 7 West. I'm not sure if I have still some time.
You have a couple of minutes.
Yeah. So quickly, I will talk about those 4 incidents. We geolocate them in Egypt. Actually, we have been immediately after the coup in Egypt, in 3rd of July, as I recall. The interferences starts on our direct-to-home frequencies in the 7th of July, and our contribution capacities, where we use it to contribute our news gathering materials from Egypt, Tahrir Square, and other areas, started 5th of July. And the interference, you cannot imagine, it is like more than 17 hours a day. And I have here some statistics shows that the total aggregated interference on 2 frequencies uplinked by Nilesat from Egypt equal to 770 hours, 770 hours continuous during, and this is more than 1 month of broadcasting. So here we are transmitting, we are paying, we are not reaching, and we are banned by force, by whatsoever you want to name it, not to reach people in the MENA and the Middle East, and especially Egypt. So now, how those guys who interfere, they know what they are doing, of course. They know what type of signal they can impose it on our legitimate signal, and they know when they can switch it off, when they can bring it up, when they can increase power, they can reduce the power, they can change its size. So this can be figured out and detected through the geolocation services. So we have some also evidences on that. But at the end, the impact is that we lost our signal on 7 West. So those 4, actually, we commissioned or we use Arabsat to geolocate 3 incidents. So here, when we geolocate 4 incidents, it doesn't mean that we have not been subject to interference the whole period. But those are the 4 incidents that we geolocate those interferences. 3 of them, geolocated by Arabsat, and mainly targeting our contribution capacities that we receive our feeds from Tahrir Square. So for the first 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, we are playing with those guys. It's a game at the end. And we change our frequency, they follow us. We play with the encryption or simple rate, or we change its size just to scatter their efforts and to make them, not easy to chase us. Then what we happen that we uplink to another capacity. Then we use another alternative capacity for same content. So they keep shooting this one while we can still using that one safely. So we trap them, like we just put them, something to hit aside from our legitimate contribution signal. Those 3 incidents actually geolocated by Arabsat. They are mainly the first one geolocated in the west of Cairo in the desert near what's called media city of Egypt, but like 70 kilometers east of this city. Then the second and third one, they have been geolocated in a very crowded area in Egypt called Masr al-Jadida. And the nearest place, actually, the diameter of geolocation is not exactly, it's accurate. So you have like a tolerance of a diameter around 2 to 3 kilometers. So within that 2 to 3 kilometer diameter, we can find we can find the Egyptian Signal Corps, which we know that Signal Corps is mainly for communications, helping any army to operate and maintain and support their communications platform. And this is, you know, for sure it is a militant area. And by using Google Maps, and some Egyptian sources, we are sure that this area is the Signal Corps, and there's militant streets, militant roads mentioned in the Google military roads, yes. Yeah, okay. Which is evidence of that it is targeted from, you know, well-established, you know, facilities. And I will come back to this point, the well-established facilities, because we have also another point regarding that. Now, the last one, the third one, before we talk about the last one, the third one was also located some in the west near the second ceiling road of somewhere in Egypt in the west side. And also it's mentioned there, military road, and this area is military for no doubt. The fourth one is also from the west, and this is geolocated by those guys, Integral Systems, where we commissioned their services, and it shows a suspicious building sitting alone in a secluded area with a tower, a microwave tower, and surrounded with what's called monitoring towers for security. And there is one big antenna on the top of that building. So when we take a close picture through Google Map, the picture talks by itself, no need to comment on it. And we put it in our, actually this report of 4 positions where we geolocate, we put it on our broadcast few months back, I think in August. We presented in Al Jazeera Arabic, Al Jazeera English TV through a promo package we made. So those are mainly the 4 incidents from Egypt. The most important point we need to notice that the interference actually targeting Al Jazeera is not only from Egypt. We have been jammed from Libya. We have been jammed from Libya and with evidences as well. But that time we don't have people to talk with in Libya. You know, people there, they don't talk, they fight only, and they use all type of weapons except talking. And then was this recently? Or before? Yeah, you know, Arab uprising started from February, I think, 2011. Yes. And continue 2012, 2013, and we are living with it on a daily basis. So I came to know about Arab uprising events through the interferences that we are facing. I am forced to. So here is the point that we are jammed from Syria, and we have evidences as well. We have been jammed from Iran. And the jamming from Syria was actually a catastrophe because they have been jamming us on Al Jazeera Media Network platforms, on Al Jazeera Sports platforms. And here they talk about the well-established size who is capable really to shoot or interfere simultaneously 8 to 10 transponders. I mean, this is not, I know, it's a fragile, we can shoot it with a simple SNG, cost a few $100,000, available with many broadcasters and available with many news agencies or service provider agencies for production houses. But what we have been suffering is really, beyond that, it's a professional intelligence type, if you want to say. So we have been, you know, we have been suffering from people from governments more than to be just simple entities. That's it.
Thank you very much. That was fascinating. Ibrahim, thank you very, very much. I, however, have one quite important question, I think, also not to preempt the discussion that we're about to have after the final presentation. And that is, you say that the most intensive period of interference was during the World Cup 2010. Now, apart from the England football team who did abysmally, who was upset with you? Who did you manage to upset? Why was the jamming intensive during the World Cup?
You know, it was we have been talking about commercial motives.
Oh, okay.
And you know, the motives of interferences can vary from political and commercial.
Yes.
So we have been suffering from both, actually. We are trying not to make anyone upset at all. We want everyone to be happy. But difficult to make difficult, yeah, exactly. So we cannot make everyone happy and please everyone.
Again, just a final question before I move to Alistair. But I recall the wall-to-wall coverage of the Rabi'a sit-in during the month of Ramadan for more than 40-45 days. Now, of course, I mean, you mentioned the locations and the geolocations and the interferences that you managed to find the sources of. But my question is, wouldn't it have been easier for those who wanted to interfere with or disrupt your broadcast to target the fixed cameras? Because from me, I was seeing Rabi'a, I think you had about 4 or 5 fixed cameras, one near the stage, one from behind the stage showing the crowds, and one from another side. And those angles were fairly fixed. So my thought at the time was, wouldn't it be easier for the authorities, if they wanted to simply target the cameras rather than go for all this technological hype and try to jam your satellites?
Actually, you're right. They can, but when they target single frequency or 2 frequencies or 3 frequencies, they will be sure that there is no content will be transmitted from Egypt. And by this way, they ensure that nobody can contribute anything from Egypt outside to the broadcasters and news agencies. So they are mainly targeting, actually in the past they have been targeting the direct to home, the final fruitful product watched by the audiences. But now they change the techniques because, you know, those guys are specialized guys. They know what they are doing. So they will try all flavor of annoying and impacting.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. Allow me to now swiftly move to our final presenter for this session. Alistair Sloan is a London-based journalist whose work has appeared in The Guardian, The Independent, The Daily Beast, The Huffington Post, Policy Mike, politics.co.uk, Index on Censorship, Middle East Monitor, Think Africa Press, Open Democracy, and The Evening Standard. That's a long list. And he's also written about censorship in Egypt and the media freedoms since the coup. So I will move to Alistair, after which we will open for a Q&A and discussion. If you can place those.
No, it should be all right.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
We'll just move these for the pleasure of our media partners. Please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm Alistair Sloan. Thank you very much for inviting me. I do write for a ridiculous number of different titles, but specifically on this issue, it's mainly Middle East Monitor, covering events in Egypt and the Gulf, and also Index on Censorship, which is a magazine about freedom of expression, and it talks about censorship issues all over the world, and I've been covering lots of Egypt in particular since the coup. So I've been asked to give a bit of background to the situation with freedom of expression in Egypt, but first maybe a little bit of history about jamming. So it's actually a very old problem. So almost as soon as we invented radar technology in the Second World War, the Germans worked out how to jam it. So and it developed into a kind of, you know, a war of technology, as much of this kind of information technology always does, that one side works out how to get information out there and the other side works out how to cancel it out. So yeah, it has a very long kind of precedent. The Cold War as well saw lots and lots of jamming, both in terms of radio stations, Radio Free Europe, the BBC World Service were all jammed going into the Soviet Union. And then in more recent times, post-revolution Iran has seen plenty of jamming. That's quite an interesting one. When they first started jamming satellites there, they weren't able to buy the technology which would allow them to reach to all the satellites, so they had to set it up on the roof of their embassy in Cuba. They eventually got caught by the Cuban authorities and had to move it over to Bulgaria, and then they got caught again, so now all the jamming happens in Iran. It's extraordinarily cheap. So the Iranians, the equipment they're using is $25,000, maybe $30,000. If you go onto Google now, you can buy satellite jamming equipment for $5,000 or $6,000 in the US, and you'll get a very polite man who will tell you how to set it all up. It's extraordinary. So three real points to make. Just wanted to highlight the censorship situation in Egypt, a few words about terrorism and journalism, and then kind of looking forward to the rest of the day, some views on solutions. So the censorship environment in Egypt is very much in Sisi's favour. So you'll all have heard that last night he has finally announced that he's running for president, and yeah, since the coup, we've seen gradual erosion of freedom of expression. So journalists have been detained, journalists have been put on trial, journalists have been beaten up, TV stations, newspapers have been shut down. We're also starting to see a lot of self-censorship. So journalists are resigning from newspapers because newspapers are too scared to run their articles. And it's really important. I mean, to borrow a phrase from the hackers group Anonymous, who do a lot, actually, they do a lot of kind of stupid things, but they do a lot of really interesting things with freedom of expression. They always say bad things happen in the dark. So it's a really important, and especially in the run-up to the election, it's very important that we have freedom of expression, in particular to support the groups who've been victimized. So freedom of association has been severely attacked. The Muslim Brotherhood, over 500 members sentenced to execution. Actually, the football fans played a key role in Tahrir Square. So the ultras were very, very good. They've been fighting the Mubarak regime in their stadia for 4 or 5 years, and they're expert at forming barricades. They know how to make a good Molotov cocktail, and they're in trouble as well now. So a couple of days ago, one of the main clubs in Cairo is now under investigation, is going to be designated a terrorist organization. And it's clear that someone is very nervous about all this opposition that's out there. And you know, satellite jamming is one part of that. It's a very important part. As others on the panel have mentioned, and as the historical precedent shows, it's a very vulnerable form of communication. It's very, very easy to do it from a technical point of view, and it's very cheap. The second point I want to make is just a kind of general observation about how these activities are justified by regimes, Egypt and other regimes around the world. So terrorism and journalism have this very weird symbiotic relationship where journalists, you know, have to and write about terrorist attacks. They're very serious. And terrorists need journalists to write about them because, you know, otherwise there's really no point bombing something if no one knows about it. So if we look at, say, for example, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, so Sisi and his regime, about a month ago they passed legislation which would allow those websites to be censored in case of an emergency, which obviously can be defined by the military. What is an emergency? And the surprising thing about it, which I wrote about a month ago, was the level of popular support. So it's around 65–70% of the population were very in favor of getting rid of Twitter, which in many ways had allowed the revolution in 2011 to happen. And it's because of this fear of terrorism. I mean, there are legitimate, reasons to fear violence in Egypt in some parts. I mean, obviously there have been bombings. There's trouble in the Sinai. But as we've seen, all over the world, the fear of terrorism always generates huge crackdowns on journalists and on freedom of expression, and it allows leaders to justify extraordinary incursions into the amount of information that society is allowed to consume. And we saw this, famously with 9/11. I mean, after 9/11, unbelievable levels of surveillance, unbelievable levels of intrusion, entire Muslim communities with cameras and microphones, not a single terrorist caught, but it was justified by the American government. Now, I think the particular danger with Sisi and his regime is that they're a military establishment, and the military are culturally and institutionally not good ever for freedom of expression. The military is a hierarchical organization. Journalists really, when they're at their best, they cause trouble from the bottom, and so it doesn't really sit well with a military structure. Military states are non-transparent. Secrecy is a key part. And military states issue instructions. They don't want discussion. They don't want consensus. They issue an instruction, and it must be followed. So, real reason to be concerned. I mean, if you look at the NSA and GCHQ and the CIA, which are kind of quasi-military organizations, when they're left to their own devices, these institutions, they really do go way too far. And the real concern with censorship now, as we look to move Egypt back into a kind of military state of affairs, is that they will again go far too far. So I just want to kind of preview some of my thoughts on the solutions. I think there's a really important role to play for global organizations such as the United Nations, the European Union, organizations pan-Arab organizations. As a journalist, I do have a kind of inherent mistrust of large organizations, but I do think that they will have a very important role to play in the long term and in trying to fix this. But I also think we shouldn't discount the short-term solutions. So there's a lot of things that you can do to make sure that in the immediate time frame, information can get out there. So, Twitter has just been banned in Turkey, and almost instantly, instructions on how to access it anyway were graffitied on walls all over Istanbul, so people were able to do it. There's a pretty good documentary called The Square, which is about events in Tahrir Square in 2011. It's a documentary made by Egyptians, and it's the first Egyptian film to be nominated for an Oscar. It's the first Arab woman to be nominated for an Oscar. But you can't see it in Egypt. It's still, I don't think it's officially been censored yet, but it's still with the censorship committee. And yeah, it's a very strange situation that one of the greatest events in modern history in Egypt can't actually be assessed or viewed in Egypt itself. But again, people are getting around it. I mean, instructions have been issued on how to access YouTube as if you were in America. viewings have been organised actually by the Muslim Brotherhood. And actually, like, all of this stuff kind of happens organically, but there might be ways in which external help could kind of cement some of the processes, could provide quick, easy software solutions that, if satellite is being jammed, you can make an immediate impact by giving people the toolkit to get around it. Yeah, I'll just return just to conclude. Censorship is something I'm very, very passionate about. I think the free flow of information is, it's the oil in democracy. Without that, the engine doesn't work, and bad things do happen in the dark. And I very much look forward to seeing if we can find a solution.
Thank you very much. I will move to close this session. My thanks and gratitude go to our panelists for today. Ibrahim Nassar from Al Jazeera, Adnan Fa'ur from Al-Hawar, and Alistair Sloan, who's a journalist and a writer. And my thanks and gratitude also goes to each and every one of you, and particularly those who took part in the discussion. Kath, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us today. And I will hand back to the organizing team to take us through to what I think is going to be a slight break, a lunch break maybe, and then a resumption in about an hour's time. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.